started. We're running a little late here, and we're not going to catch up. You guys get us for a full 45 minutes, and I don't care how late we start. So I'm extremely excited to be able to moderate this panel. We have an incredible group up here of CEOs. To my left, Marten, Mickos, CEO of Eucalyptus. Next to him is Ron Bodkin, CEO of Think Big Analytics. Then we have Lawrence Guillory, CEO of Racemi, and Emil, Sayegh, CEO of Codero Hosting, and last but not least, Kemp, CEO of Nebula. And I'm Jim Kaskade. I'm the CEO of Infochimps. Really glad to be talking about the topic of business of cloud and big data. So with that, I want to start with a definition. I think we all understand what cloud computing is, so I won't bore you with that. But I do want to define big data because it is a key aspect of this topic, of this panel. And so my view of big data really comes down to a very simple concept. You have data infrastructure that's not supporting your business needs today, whether that's a database or database infrastructure or hardware, a combination thereof. It's not able to scale, and that's typically a function of the volume, the velocity, and the variety of data that you're trying to consume. That is my high-level definition. And what I wanted to intro is kind of the current state and adoption of the combination of cloud and big data. Big data is being defined by a suite of disruptive technologies that have been created by companies like Google, Yahoo, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, et cetera. That's really putting quite a bit of pressure on platform vendors such as Oracle, IBM, et cetera. And those technologies are typically being deployed in a fixed resource, on-premise, on bare metal environment. So the combination of that type of new disruptive technology being deployed in cloud is really for early adopters, for companies that know that they can take advantage of both the big data benefits as well as the cloud delivery model. So those are some of the things that I wanted to highlight first. I think when you're bringing big data together with cloud, big data is hard. It's very difficult. So you better make sure that when you're deploying it on cloud, that you've got cloud in a form that's easy to manage. And I think making big data easy on cloud infrastructure is probably one of the first things I wanted to talk to, and maybe we can point that to Marten, Mickos. Big data is hard. How do we make the elastic infrastructure as a service, easy to use, and the combination of it with big data easy to consume?
Thanks. That's a great question. And I think we all know that today most big data deployments, if they are Hadoop deployments, are on bare metal and not on cloud infrastructures. But we're seeing it happening now on Amazon with their big data solution, EMR. And from there it will come back onto on-premise environments, which is what we see at Eucalyptus. But we have seen a lot of use cases where the big data use is so constant and predictable that they don't necessarily need all the elasticity. Now we're seeing trends of more elastic needs, whereas ad hoc analytics, near real-time analytics that need to be run on a big number of machines, and then suddenly they don't need it and they can let something else use it. That's where platforms like Eucalyptus come in.
I might just point out one of the things. My company, Think Big Analytics, we're a services firm. We do engineering and data science work to help enterprises really take advantage of big data. And there's a couple of use cases where we see early adoption of cloud in the big data space. One is just around the fast time to value to start developing and prototyping and proving value of big data platforms. And then the other one is highly variable workloads, which are often situations like providing analytics as a service to an end customer. You already have a customer, you're providing them some other data set, some other capability. Maybe it's a physical product like an airplane engine or a device you've installed. And now you want to start providing data and analytics to your same customer base. It's a highly variable workload. And so that makes cloud very attractive, the ability to quickly spin up and provision capability. So we think that those are some of the early adoption workloads where you see enterprises saying we want to put big data on cloud rather than on bare metal.
And I think that defines the kind of the size of the big data problem. So if we're looking at big data projects that are somewhat kind of early and small, call it big small data, if you can say that.
Aspirational big data.
Aspirational big data. There we go. Then maybe we define those and launch those in a public cloud setting. But for those companies that are actually trying to amass big data analytics against petabytes or terabytes and petabytes of data, that's going to happen on premise in a private cloud setting. So we got to make private cloud. I think as an early adopter of big data and cloud, I think we have to make private cloud kind of the focus of the discussion for the most part. And when we're trying to scale up thousands of servers and we just want to make that simple, that seems like something either Marten or maybe Chris, maybe you can speak to. Again, how do we bring together an environment where big data can be deployed on your infrastructure as a service, even in a private cloud setting?
I think you look at where the data comes from. As we look at what's going on out there, if you have a lot of infrastructure, it might be a network of satellites in orbit around the Earth, it might be gene sequencers, it might be some direct connection into some financial exchange, and if all that data is originated within the infrastructure of your organization, and it's big, and big, I agree with the definition, is petabytes or many hundreds of petabytes of data, or even a couple of terabytes, moving that to the public cloud is expensive, it's time consuming, and so we've developed this idea of this data gravity. And so if your data gravity is local to your enterprise, you should be using a private cloud. If your data gravity is the internet, if you've got some sort of online website, transactional system, you're crawling the web, you've got web pictures people are uploading from browsers, then you can use a public cloud for that, because then it's going from the internet to the internet and staying on the internet. And typically, if it's coming from now there are exceptions to this, and the big exception is security, where if you have privacy concerns, regardless of the source of the data, and you need to maintain a higher level of control over all the physical and logical controls in the system, then you might also look at private cloud, even if it's more expensive to operate. So that's how I look at the big data and public-private cloud.
And if I may, so the choice between on-premise private cloud and public cloud, there's a third choice, which is a private cloud that is off-premises, right? That is hosted, and that eliminates a lot of the concerns that people have with on-premises, which is, look, I have to rack, I have to stack, I have to monitor, I have to do all this stuff myself. Well, let somebody else take care of that problem, but still maintain the advantages of bare metal, bare metal performance. Plus, if that off-premise provider, hosting provider, et cetera, also has a cloud that is a hybrid approach where, for those spiky workloads and for those, short-term usage, test and dev, whatnot, I can spike to it, and then keep my constant workloads on the dedicated bare metal gear. I think that would be kind of like the third option, or the third way that I would propose. However, that cannot happen in a traditional hosting setting. It has to be a very automated bare metal provisioning, rapid provisioning, so on and so forth. It's not your traditional, hosting provider that's going to be able to do that. So your infrastructure has to be entirely automated that can accommodate both cloud and dedicated, and be able to kind of create a private cloud around those bare metal infrastructure.
Are we going to have a boil the ocean kind of single platform that does everything to everybody, or are we going to have purpose-built solutions depending on the application use cases? Because doesn't it come down to the application?
And Jim, certainly I think that's a great point. That we spend a lot of time with our customers in terms of planning out how they adopt big data, what are the drivers of value. And we see companies that are succeeding are ones where the business is aligned with the technology team in terms of what can we achieve with this, whether it be driving better relevance to consumers through recommendations or new products that create new value to them, whether it be device manufacturers, whether it's tracking a cell phone or a server that's installed in an IT department. It's having the business aligned and having a notion of what are the capabilities that you want to provide lined up with what does it take organizationally and technically to provide it, right? So there's a number of great big data technologies. Hadoop has been the most prominent, but there's some fantastic NoSQL, emerging streaming big data such as Storm. There's a range of distributed machine learning libraries that can run on top of these environments. So there's some fantastic technology. But you can't start with, let me grab a bunch of nails and start hammering and figure out where this is going to end up, right? Mm-hmm. In the same way, you don't want to say, well, let me pick an environment and then I'll figure out what I'm going to do with it. You want to start with the business problem and then say, what's the match here? What are the governance constraints? What are the regulatory needs? Where should this be running? What technology should we use? And how do we sequence the rollout to make sure we create value and get to a self-sustained momentum where the value you're getting from the initiative is creating enough momentum in the organization, enough results that you want to fund additional work because it's doing so much for you.
I think what you're hearing is the right tool for the right workloads, and there's no single tool that's going to fit all of it, right? And you want to be able to have a flexible hybrid approach so that you can put the right workload on the right infrastructure and grow it according to the business needs and the application needs. So
I kind of see if you've got a lot of data infrastructure that you've invested in. Corporate IT, you got some shadow IT, you might have some outsourced data center infrastructure, and you've got these established workloads that you want to now add more data to, add more data analytics, take advantage of big data technologies. Do you start from scratch, or do you migrate some of those workloads, some of that data? Lawrence, you're in the business of helping people understand production workloads and how to migrate them. What's your perspective on, how do we tackle this?
So, brief introduction on Racemi. So, there's some background on the data. We're the market-leading solution for migrating companies into private and public clouds. We work with most prominently the top 40 cloud providers globally, and we're the leading solution for that. So, we have a big perspective cross-sectionally across all the top clouds and what projects are being moved into private and public clouds. Saying that, I've got an opinionated view of my history in IT and not necessarily which projects are going. So two things to address. One, the foundational question you brought up earlier, Jim, on the elasticity underneath big data and how to do it. My response would be for this audience, who I think this is an audience just trying to tap into big data, I would not figure out elasticity. I'd follow those who have already solved it. So there's companies out there who have solved it, and whether they've solved it in a private cloud environment or a hosted private cloud environment or public cloud, that's simply economics. Figure out what economics and move forward with it, because what Ron pointed out, it's around the analytics and driving your business with predictive analytics and making smart business decisions. So get on to what you're trying to do from a business standpoint and stop trying to figure out the architecture and elasticity. Other companies have found out how to do it. There's market leaders in that. Bet on the market leaders and just move forward. If you're an early adopter, you probably are because you're here, just go for it. So from a migration standpoint, what I will say is more and more production workloads. We're involved right now in 2 very large SAP migrations to the cloud, and I think people, if they didn't hear that, would think that was impossible. So big production workloads moving to cloud environments is quite possible.
Interesting. So that would lead me to think that maybe I can migrate some of my existing Big Data 1.0 applications into new Big Data 2.0 application environments.
Absolutely, and then architecture. I think Chris Pink pointed on, I think the smartest thing in that strategy is the compute is going to be delivered. That's obvious. The bigger thing is your data strategy. And for latency, that's physics, right? So speed of light is speed of light. So if you've got to move a lot of data, make that central and core to your infrastructure strategy, and the rest will follow.
So I think we're actually, and I've said this to a number of people before, but we're at steady state today in terms of the data infrastructure and what CIOs and IT are willing to do and how they adopt new technologies. That meaning you have central IT, they're going to have build and own their own suite of technologies. You're going to have shadow IT and business groups or business units around them who need to be more nimble, act more quickly, and have some of their own controls. And then you're going to have these virtual private data centers where you're going to have outsourced infrastructure, and you're going to finally have the public cloud. So that's a lot of different layers in the onion, a lot of different infrastructure. You got to have some sort of standards across that to be able to move workloads or be able to seamlessly work from one of those organizations into the other. Marten, what is your perspective on maintaining some level of standardization, whether it be the AWS API in the cloud versus down in Eucalyptus? I mean, what's your view of how we bring this hybrid infrastructure to bear for the enterprise?
Well, I'd say as a general rule, never bet against the de facto standard. Don't try to bet against x86. Don't try to bet against VHS. Don't try to bet against Linux. Don't try to bet against AWS's API abstractions. But then when we go into the particulars of cloud computing, we're talking about nuances here. What we believe in is the Amazon API abstractions. We really think they have become a de facto standard and will take over nearly everything that happens in computing. Because for the simple reason that all developers under the age of 30 are developing on EC2 today with their mother's credit cards.
Do you agree with that, Chris?
I think we got into our debate now, didn't we?
I would say we support EC2 APIs as well. So I think you don't want to bet against EC2 APIs today. That doesn't mean that there's no room for innovation. And I think there's a lot of companies that are trying to innovate outside of that ecosystem, and they've taken a pretty good run at it.
So
yes, and of course you can invent things everywhere, but an innovation is something that brings a new dimension of performance. And if you're not following the de facto standard, you're left outside. Like those amazing inventions we saw on the OS2 operating system in the 80s. It was a better operating system than Windows, but because Wintel won, all those great inventions died with OS2. And we have something similar going on right now, and we don't know how it will completely play out. But we are placing bets, and Eucalyptus, as you know, is betting completely with the Amazon APIs because we think that they are defining the new world.
So
and
Amazon's the new Wintel.
I think
of cloud.
I think Amazon Web Services is the new Linux, you could say, the place where the smartest developers congregate and where they share their innovations. And that will have a meaning beyond the company Amazon. It will just have a meaning for the people who are there.
So we have Google Compute, we have Rackspace, we have a whole slew of public cloud providers, and I know there's definitely a lot of big data activity within Amazon just because of their visionary first mover status of offering EMR, coupling with a lot of the innovation that's going on in the data center. Ron, what's your perspective in terms of the use of big data technologies in Amazon versus these virtual private clouds?
Sure. Oh, the first thing, I have to go back to the thing you said about the steady state of adoption. I think, in fact, we're not in a steady state of adoption, that we're in this exciting time here where for the last 10 years, IT has been in 80-20 mode of 80% of the budget is keeping the lights on, and that's maybe charitable, right? Cutting costs, trying to do more with less. And suddenly, we find ourselves with this explosion of innovation with big data, unlocking disruptive new capabilities and the explosion of data, creating a mandate for business from a competitive standpoint to do new things. And IT is being called to step forward as an innovation partner for the business. But there's two possible futures in my mind. I'll get back to your question, but I had to editorialize on this. Either IT will move forward as an innovation partner for the business, or the function that was formerly known as IT will become part of the business. It will be folded right into product development, and technology is so integral to products today at companies that trying to separate out information technology from the products and capabilities of a cell phone, a device that's shipping out, a smart connected car, it's becoming increasingly hard to draw that line, right? So the future is very much in play here as we see technology driving automated decisions and new value being created. Now to your question about the cloud. So Amazon certainly has established a big leadership position in big data in the cloud because they've got such a strong leadership position generally in cloud commercially, and they've made a lot of investments, starting with Elastic MapReduce. More recently, one of the things that isn't maybe often noticed, but Amazon rolled out instance types machines that are well configured to support big data with lots of local disk and high bandwidth networking, right? That was part of the Redshift announcement, which is hosted MPP database, which is interesting in its own right. But the point is, Amazon has put a lot of investment into driving innovations, integration with virtual cloud and so forth. So Amazon is continuing to do very well and capturing a lot of mind share and a lot of early adoption, especially along the use cases I described. But it's clearly early innings. And there's no doubt that today the majority of adoption of big data is in bare metal on-premise systems. So there's very much a question around what does that mean? How do you build the hybrid cloud systems that tie together what's going on in the public cloud and the private cloud? And so, as always, it's an exciting time for the customer because there's a range of a virtuous competition among providers to come up with the best options. And we really believe that customers should take a close look at roadmaps, but also look at current capabilities and needs and build the standards, right? Build to the APIs that are the standards. The best case, where you don't have to choose, where you've got an open source platform that is also a standard. Things like Hadoop, where you have a lot of confidence in a community driving a standard, and it's also the de facto standard, right? That is the best thing to bet on because there's very little risk in that scenario.
Please, Lawrence.
To add to that, so with Racemi and our migrations that we conduct, we're talking inward to thousands of servers on a monthly basis. So hybrid cloud, there's an aha there for me that we're seeing as well. The movement to public cloud, which is 90% of the migrations that we do, 8% cloud to cloud and 2% out of cloud back to on-prem. It is establishment in many cases of building hybrid clouds where it's taking the compute servers and variable workloads in that complex application and moving it to a public cloud, and your data is staying behind your own firewall in your own data center. And so that is absolutely a standard we're seeing across the top 40 clouds. So from an architecture standpoint, if you're trying to consider that, you're following best practice whether you expect it or not.
That's probably a great future, but I would challenge the fact that migrating into the public cloud for big data applications is just not going to happen in our near future, right? Because we're talking about massive amounts of data and applications that are crunching massive amounts of data. You got to bring the compute to the data, not the data to the compute, correct?
So maybe you and I are looking at it at different levels. I think I'm looking at big data 50,000 foot above what you just described. So I'm looking at it the whole business, and the business somewhere downstream is counting on the data, the analytics that come out of it, the predictive analytics to make decisions that your sales team may need or your end customer may need, and that can be delivered downstream in your overall big data strategy. The crunching of the data and making that decision, you're right, it needs to be close to the data. The compute and the data need to be close together. So I'm looking at a broader holistic strategy.
And Lawrence is spot on. I mean, hybrid, if you're developing on a hybrid platform, that would be the ideal solution where you're able to go from on-prem, off-prem, cloud, so on and so forth in a seamless way using APIs in an automated manner. That is kind of the holy grail. But and just to kind of pick up on something that Marten said, so when these developers that are under 30 kind of grow up and they have to put it on their own credit cards or their investors come in and say, well, look, let's see, now we're going to look at the operational costs. And they have constant workloads, and they're paying 3x as much as they would if they were on a dedicated type of infrastructure that is hosted. Then, all these realities are going to come into play, and this is where a hybrid approach is very powerful because you'd be able to move very quickly from a kind of test and dev environment that is purely cloud. And this is where a lot of our businesses, this is kind of the underlying kind of tone here that you're hearing from all of us, basically, where you're getting the best of both worlds because, you'll move basically from living in a hotel to owning your, to maybe renting an apartment to owning your own house at some point, right? So makes sense.
But Jim, I think it's an important point. Data gravity is definitely an important element, right? That if you've got a large data set, being able to analyze it in place is important. But it's also worth noting that most of the very large data sets are naturally collected in distributed data centers around the world because of latency, right? So most of our petabyte scale customers have many data centers where they're collecting data and they're already backhauling it to data centers, and most of them are looking to have more than one compute center, have some kind of active processing capacity so they have business continuity if they lose connectivity to a data center, for example, right? So there is a certain point that you're going to have to move a lot of data around in order to get to the advantage of doing full-scale analytics. You know, there's a lot of different debates around how much can you decentralize and do distributed analysis, but today, state of the art is most of the heavy lifting is going on in batch and Hadoop in a more centralized location, and data is being backhauled. You know, if you already have the data centralized in one place, you've already backhauled it once, backhauling it twice isn't attractive, but depends on the data sets you're working with.
Maybe I could add one thing to that. So if you think about, on one axis, private cloud versus public cloud, and this data gravity issue is a key factor in your decision there. But as you talk about Hadoop, what you're really talking about is moving data not just into a data center or onto the same network as where compute is, but literally onto the same physical machine. Right? And so I think as we start to look at applications that really perform well in the cloud, and as you start to use Google as an example, what we really see is applications that are able to distribute massive amounts of data across hundreds of thousands of machines, where the data isn't in some set of storage appliances on the left side of your data center, and then you have a bunch of blade servers on the right side of your data center, and in the middle you have a bunch of brocade fiber channel switches connecting them all together with InfiniBand, right? You know, you don't want to try to move an exabyte of data from one side of the building to the other side of the building, just like you don't want to move it from one side of the country to the other side of the country. So really efficient cloud applications, when you start to think about, maybe on the other axis, the difference between cloud and virtualization. Real cloud applications are applications that are able to use infrastructure to increase their performance or increase their reliability. And so the best of the best cloud applications are applications that have direct hooks into the infrastructure.
They're aware of the scalability.
And they're aware of the infrastructure. And arguably, why VMware is having such a challenge here is they did such a good job of making the applications unaware of the fact they've been virtualized. You know, their greatest asset for the past 10 years as they grew that business was the ease with which they transparently moved applications. The applications were unaware of the fact that a tablecloth has been inserted under them called the hypervisor. And that's what fueled their growth, and that's what will make it so challenging for them to move into this new world, because the last 25 years of software are blissfully unaware of the fact that the infrastructure is now dynamic.
Very true.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would love to see, as a user of big data technology, you know, as I watch customers using big data technology, I'd love to have both the comfort that I'm in kind of the four walls that are secure for me and my data, and yet I have access to elastic infrastructure, you know, at linear infinite scale that I don't have to pay for. So I gotta believe that with the innovations of a Eucalyptus, a Nebula in outsourced data centers that Emil's managing, that we can get this, that I don't necessarily, you know, some applications I can put up in Werner Vogel's cloud, and some of them I can carve out in VPC. Some of them maybe he'll even give me that's not VPC, it's just for me, the special XYZ company. But then there's this whole other market of managed service, kind of virtual private clouds that are creating infrastructure as a service cloud ecosystems as well. Is that not true? Is that not happening, Emil?
Absolutely.
Do you see that?
Absolutely, we see that all the time. I mean, we have, at Codero, we have customers that come to us and say, hey, look, you know, we want to have private infrastructure for big data applications that are constant workload. We keep them, you know, with you for security reasons, privacy reasons, cost reasons, throughput reasons, you know, performance reasons, you know, multiple reasons. Yet we want to be able to burst into Amazon, and that is a challenge, right? And we want to.
So do you have Amazon direct into your data center? Is that?
We do that. Yes, we do that. And then, you know, some other customers say, look, you know, your cloud scale is good enough for us, and, you know, we'll burst into your cloud, right? So that's kind of the holy grail of this hybrid approach. And look, you know, the technology is evolving on both the dedicated side, the cloud side, and there's kind of a movement where traditional dedicated gear is becoming much more dynamic than it was. You're able to spin it up and spin it down with the use of hypervisors, so you're able to give customers, some privacy and some quality service level on that gear. And it's becoming a little bit more cloud-like, not exactly cloud-like. It's never gonna have the extreme elasticity that cloud has, but it's becoming more elastic. And that's good for a lot of the workloads. It's good enough for a lot of the workloads where and you can predict how much usage you're gonna have. And then in those specific cases, then cloud is perfect. And you can either burst to Amazon or burst to a public cloud that is within that data center.
So within your hosted services, what percentage are you seeing vSphere enabled versus OpenStack enabled versus Eucalyptus enabled, et cetera? I mean, what's your kind of view of the proprietary versus open, versus bare metal?
Yeah, I mean, our view is that VMware has its place because of legacy considerations. I mean, it's been, as Chris said, they've been the market leader for the last 10 years, in virtualization. And look, that momentum is going to carry them for a long time. And there are some very specific use cases where that is valid. We see that probably, I would say 10, 15% of the workloads that we see, that my company sees, that's not speaking for the entire market. But I definitely see the emergence of OpenStack, Eucalyptus, CloudStack, Citrix. CloudStack doesn't get a lot of publicity, but it's also a definite contender. I don't want to create a big debate here between the platforms, but
why not?
But frankly, there is again a third way that's out there that is a very robust platform. That runs a lot of workloads.
So I got to believe that big data is the killer app for cloud. Get us beyond test and dev, right? In terms of private cloud infrastructure. Marten, what's your view? What do you think big data is going to mean to your business?
I think it's not enough. I believe cloud is disrupting the entire IT world like client server did 30 years ago. And there will be many killer apps, and it's bigger than we can imagine. We're now talking about AWS being perhaps 2 billion in revenue, or last year, and growing to 4. They will grow to 10. They will grow to tens of billions. This will be enormous, and we will see disruption in analytics, how we deal with data, how we develop software, how we deploy software, how we make changes to software, how we serve consumers, how we have sensors all over the place and inside ourselves and doing real-time analytics. So big data, absolutely. We already know that it works because there's Hadoop and there's technologies to make it work, but it still is just the tip of the iceberg. And I think these two guys see it because you're dealing with them.
So Ron, if big data is a Hadoop batch analytics, if it's NoSQL near real time, if it's real time consuming data in motion, all of that coming together, what's your crystal ball? What percentage of the workloads is it going to consume in the cloud?
Well, I think the important point is that big data and cloud are both moving very fast, and there's a fascinating intersection point, which we've been talking about today, but there's a lot of value in each of them, even when they're not together, right? So what we see is that big data is a whole range of great applications that ultimately the most important thing people can do with big data is to get started on low-hanging fruit, to find a trusted partner that's a specialist that works well with the technology to get to that first success. And that can coincide with cloud based on the right strategy. Is it creating value for the business problem you're trying to solve? But getting the right starting point, going for low-hanging fruit, and getting quick wins to build organizational momentum is critical, because we do truly believe big data is going to become an axis of competition in many industries, driving customer intimacy, driving intelligence around your smart connected products. The winners are those that are going to embrace this and be excellent at it, and the losers are going to be the laggers that are chasing the others.
Amen.
Lawrence, any thoughts?
I'm glad I had a chance to think about your point, because I disagreed with you when you first said it. So I think you're right, Jim. And I'd maybe characterize it differently, that the killer app is real-time business intelligence, which is an output of big data, and that's what you're saying. And so the vision that I see that's coming out of it is no longer is the important intelligence in the data is 3 months away from some executive or some VP in a large enterprise saying, you know, Dan, what if we could analyze this data and let's get a business analyst on this and let's get it in to some spreadsheet and let's get it in some format to make some decision. And that's what enterprises are doing now. And I think all of you have experienced that painful run and not even be able to getting an analyst. And I think big data is getting at that real-time intelligence. And I think that is going to be the killer app, and you're absolutely right. And I think the most important thing to take away is Ron's advice is, you know, don't overthink this. You know, you've got talented companies out here figuring this out. You've got companies like Ron's that have already paved the way. Just pick an important project, small low-hanging fruit, hire someone, and just get started. Trying to do the big thing and boil the ocean, you're going to get cogged down and you're going to be a laggard. And it's, as Marten pointed out, highly competitive, and you need to get into the race and not overthink it.
Yeah, one thing, you now have choices, right? You know, we just shipped a product a few weeks ago. You can now buy a cloud. You can show up, turn it on, flip a power switch on, it boots up, and you have a petascale system. Amazon will rent you a cloud, and Marten will help you build a cloud. So you can buy, rent, or build. If you want to take what you build or what you buy and operate it somewhere, my friend here on the right can help you with that. There are apps that are optimized around certain use cases. If you want to move things around between these systems that you buy, rent, and build, my colleague here, Jonathan, can help you with that. So we've got a great set of options here that you've never had before. And I think the next question you need to start asking is, well, what ecosystem do you want to hang your hat on? You know, we just got back from Portland a few weeks ago. We had 3,000 people at the Portland Convention Center at the last OpenStack meeting. In Beijing, we're expecting 6,000. Every 6 months, OpenStack doubles. We had 650 contributors of code to the last release. So I effectively have 650 developers working at Nebula right now because all that code is in our product. So it's just a question of, you know, if you need to go build something, if you need all the levers and all the knobs and you want to customize everything, Marten's got a great product. You know, it's been on the market for a while, and you need to have that level of flexibility. If you just want to rent something, Amazon's a great product. And I think when you look at data gravity, you look at security, if you look at the kind of flexibility you want in the actual system that you build, you've never had more choices. And I think that's the sign of a mature market. And we all have great customers that are referenceable these days. So I think we're there. It's not hype. Cloud's a great place to run big data applications. It's a killer app, and there are many more killer apps that people are building every day on clouds. So.
That's a great comment, and I think we'll go around just on some closing comments with the panel because we're hitting our end here. Cloud's here to stay. It's becoming a majority adopted, you know, approach to deploying your applications and your data infrastructure. Big data is immature, but it's been built off of the shoulders of giants. And clearly the combination is a pretty important perfect storm, I should say. So obviously there are going to be some challenges as we move forward, you know, in the adoption over the next 5 years. Maybe just a quick comment on, you know, some key messages to the audience on what you think they should consider that we haven't already said to be aware of as we see this combination of cloud and big data become a reality en masse. Marten?
So if we take the discussion up from technology, because big data actually isn't a use case or an application, it's a technology. Mm-hmm. But if you look higher up, what's happening is now that in companies you can go into much more detail, you can measure anything and everything, and you should. And then with cloud, the other side is that you can develop software much faster. You can test it immediately. You change one line of code and you immediately test it. So gone are those long cycles where you have waterfall methods and it takes time to get somewhere. You can operate much more ad hoc, but much more accurately because you do real-time analytics. And not just on Hadoop. You use main memory databases, you use NoSQL databases, And when you have a cloud infrastructure underlying it, it can be ad hoc. You can decide from day to day, from hour to hour, which workloads you need to run at that very moment on your infrastructure. Whether your infrastructure is your own and you're running Eucalyptus, or it's rented and you're running Amazon, or you have some other combination, or you're doing a hybrid.
Ron?
I think those are great points. To build on that, from our perspective, the exciting thing here in big data is ultimately around these diverse data sets, that we have a chance to reflect a more realistic notion of the world. So with sensors, with smarter products that have software logs and information about them, blending technical data with business data, we see companies expressing their unique character in systems of engagement that are increasingly hybrid. And we see that the opportunity for business in putting these data sets together is to have a faster time to value, a test and learn, more accuracy about what's really going on, X-ray vision into the real world in an automated way. And that's going to transform business with automated decisions. And that naturally is going to have deep repercussions as cloud continues to become mainstream. To me, the obvious analogy is 10 years ago, the idea that you would put sensitive sales data up in a cloud environment was heresy, right? Nobody would do such a crazy thing. And now most of the large organizations in the world are using some form of software as a service for CRM. Often it's Salesforce.com, right? So quickly mindsets change. So cloud is, in our view, inevitable. It's just a question of the time of deployment. But to us, the critical thing that companies need to be doing now is finding these high-value applications that blend multiple data sets that express their unique character to create competitive advantage. And we really feel that that's the germ of where big data is going to have the big impact on the enterprise and create the most value.
Great. Lawrence?
So one of the fun things about my job every day is the oh my God moment, and that comes through our sales teams and the calls I'm invited to be on. And so I think for at least a cross-section that has looked at migrating to public or private clouds, there's the depressing, how do we get started? How do we get our data? We don't know anything about this application. The guy that built it left it, which project, whatnot. This is going to be hard. There's this crappy VMDK import tool that sucks, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'll offer to you is we have a product called CloudPath. It takes less than 1 minute to capture a server and migrate it into a cloud, about 20 minutes to move the data. It scales extremely well. So I'm a big, big believer in low-hanging fruit, find a small project, and just get it done. So if anyone gives me their business card, I will pass it on to marketing. And the first 5 servers you want to migrate into a cloud, free of charge. And give you a chance to actually take advantage of the keen advice given today of just get started. Pick a small project and just make it happen. So that's what I'll pass on is the advice of just getting started. And if you want free service for doing that for the first 5 servers, first small application that you want to test, I'll back you 100%.
And anybody willing to pay money, any of these panelists will help you.
Yes.
Emil?
Yeah, look, of course, big data is here to stay, and it's definitely something that that is driven from on top. As CEOs, we have ADD as well, and we want to see a lot of the data come into light very quickly. So performance, the amount of data that's available. Some of my teams here, they know. We're constantly looking for data to kind of look for insights. So that is the reality of this new age, and we're lucky. We are very lucky to be sitting at this age, at this kind of intersection between this massively scalable platform that's called cloud, this this killer application that's coming in, which is big data, and we're sitting right at the intersect. So the last piece of advice that I would leave the audience with is right workload for the right platform for the right workload. Be cognizant when you're test and deving. Use the right platform for that, and then when you are in production, use the right platform. And also be cognizant about what you're going to do when you're going to be transitioning between these 2 platforms. Once you grow up and you're using your own credit card, think about that. So with that, I'll leave it to Chris. Yeah.
Chris, last but not least.
I mean, I think it's so easy to try to rationalize a really simple view of the world where everything fits into an architecture slide that fits on one PowerPoint. And I think a lot of CIOs try to achieve that beautiful simplicity in their existing investments that they've made, right? Because they've put a lot of money into a storage vendor or a virtualization vendor or scale, blade computing vendor. And I think I want to resonate with everything that was just said here. There isn't a tool that will run every piece of software ever invented and everything that you're currently working on and will be key to the future of your business available from vendors that focused on the last 25 years of computing. It's why Google and Facebook and Amazon look nothing like enterprise data centers. Nothing like enterprise data centers. So what I would say is follow this advice. Find a couple of smart people that are doing really innovative work, get a private cloud, get some accounts on Amazon, be generous, and just, if you're a big company and you're not using Amazon, if you're not using some private cloud infrastructure, and if you're not using VMware, you're doing it wrong. Because there's a lot of opportunities to take advantage of in what those technologies offer. And it's great to have choices.
What a great panel. What great advice. A lot of innovation, a lot of disruption sitting right here on this couch. Let's give a hand of applause to this group.